What is up, fellow modelers? Today we're going to be learning how to paint some white stuff, because that's always pretty tricky. We're going to do some freehand camouflage. That's usually pretty tricky too. And this is actually the first time I actually did freehand camouflage, but it worked out great. Guess I could have sped this up a little bit. Could right now, but I'm already recording. It's satisfying. There we go. And we use some milliput to attach some landing gear. Let's get right into it. So first we're going to start with assembling the inner fuselage. You can actually start off with actually fusing the fuselage together. That's what the instructions say, but I just started off with the cockpit as that's just typically what I do. All I did to the interior of this was just pre-prime it. I had some extra primer in the sprayer while the box was out, so I figured I'd just slap it on there while I had it out. Next, I put all this stuff together on the interior. Yeah, I could have definitely opted to do this a different way, but tweezers and seem to work. I feel like tweezers are my worst enemy, to be honest. They're supposed to help me on everything, but really they just make everything more difficult. But continuing on with the build, we're just assembling this whole fuselage. It's very simple. The Tamiya kit's great. Everything fits well, and it's really easy to assemble everything in this kit and then paint it afterwards. I primed it all with Vallejo green primer, or olive drab primer, and that's just my go-to primer for the interior, as it does add some flakes and dust to it since it's Vallejo. So I just use that to my advantage and use it just on the interior of stuff. Next, I can finally assemble all the rest of the fuselage. I attach these little things, whatever they are, and then spray the interior of the cockpit interior green. I figured since this was a Martlet instead of a standard American thing, I would just paint it interior green as a little bit of a contrast. Next, we're going to spray some light pink before we paint this interior white. And this is a vital step if you're painting white over gray or any other color for that matter. It has to happen. So get a lighter pink than this. I opted to use this pink as it was already pre-mixed, and it just wasn't light enough. So do 1 drop of red to 10 parts of white, and then you'll get a nice light pink. And then once you spray your white over it, it shows up nice and clear and super white in there. So I sprayed a gloss coat on it so I could do a wash, a nice little dark wash in there, and as you can see, it turned out really well. Sometimes white is a little bit of a pain, and also I still had to do 10 coats with this pink primer, so don't think you're getting away with much just because you use a pink to coat that white. I still coated it like probably 10 times. Next, I'm doing some aluminum chipping on the interior of the cockpit so that it brings out and highlights some detail. Honestly, this is one of the only kits that I did a pretty good job of painting those like knobs and nodules and blacks and boxes and stuff. And sometimes I just kind of get over, the boxes are a little crooked. So honestly, I probably could have gotten away with doing this kit and making it look brand new, but it's just a vital step to make things look more realistic, or just have that extra oomph inside of the kit. So it's kind of a vital step, silvering and doing a wash in the interior of your kit. Next, I'm doing some Starship wash on the engine part and landing gear part of the Wildcat, and yeah, this just really highlights all those good details, makes that chain look really dirty, and definitely going to make it look worn and weathered. Once the wash is on, I just use some mineral spirits and just dab it all over the model so that it looks better and kind of more realistic and kind of drippy and droopy and dusty and grimy, because these things weren't well taken care of. So just soak your brush in that mineral spirits and just go over it a million times until it's done. Bit tricky getting it in there, but once it's all settled in, it sits just fine. So next we're gonna just assemble these wings real quick, and I'm pretty sure you know what that looks like, so I don't need to show it here. But just for some nostalgia purposes, I'm gonna show you just a little bit how well these wings fit, and they fit great. So let's move on. I painted the front part of the canopy black just with some primer or whatever. But next I can glue this canopy right on it, and on all my canopies I use liquid tape, and that's the best way that I've found to put canopies on airplanes, as it's just sticky enough to make sure that it doesn't fall off. Next I can assemble the rest of the kit, which probably could have been done before I primed it, but I didn't. Anyways, we can move on to the engine now. I do the engine very simply on this kit, as it's not really that scene, and the Tamiya engine is pretty detailed. I mean, compared to what they have now, no, not so detailed, but you use a little bit of dry brushing on it and you get those decent details. Then you put a wash on it and it comes right out. So honestly, that's all I really want to do with engines anyways, because you could spend a month on an engine if you seriously wanted to, but I have a collection to build here. I'm taking my tips from the Model Geeks on this one. I actually use what Nemo said was to dry brush it with Model Master Silver. That is the shiniest silver that you can find on the market, is Model Master Silver. And that's what I use in this kit, and it turned out great. I did it on my 02, and you'll see that in the next video. Next, I use some highlight shadowing and panel line accenting in this next clip here, just quickly going around every single little tiny panel and splotching it with paint. I'm actually just using interior green color on this part, as I had some left over and I just used it on that part. So I have it thinned out about 80-20 for the interior green, and I'm just splotching it around the model, as you can see. This is a very satisfying part, but it does take a long time to do if you are actually doing it yourself. At this point, it doesn't really matter how messy it is, it just matters if you kind of dull those bad splotches out. At this point, I was getting really bad splotches in my airbrush, so I took it apart and cleaned it a little bit, and then got to work with the colors. So once those were hammered out, and they took forever to do, but not that long, honestly. I mean, compared to other airbrushing, since there was D-Day stripes that I was putting decals on, it really wasn't that bad. Next, I thinned my paint out like 90-10, thinner to Tamiya paint ratio, and now I'm just going over those points, the camouflage marks, just time after time after time, getting that line established without ruining the work that I already previously did. It's a super hard and technical thing to do at this point, but just make sure your paint's translucent and you'll be alright. As you can see, I'm just basically showing you the main lines that are on all these camouflage kits. If you look at a Spitfire, a Tempest, all those British camouflage schemes, they are all literally the same, but still is an awesome scheme, especially on a Wildcat. So they basically go over the same type of lines that any other airplane would in that era. I'm actually using the Tamiya RAF dark green for one color of this camouflage, and ocean gray by Vallejo for another color. I use Tamiya acrylic thinner for all of my paints nowadays. I don't screw around with any other thinners other than, what the heck is it called? It's called, I think, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting it. It's called Horse Tears? Horse Tears. Yeah. Magical Horse Tears. That's what it is. Yeah, Magical Horse Tears. Unicorn Tears. Unicorn Tears. And that is Mr. Color's leveling thinner. So I just drop in with a Tamiya acrylic thinner and the paint that I'm using. And like I said, 80-20. Make this nice and translucent so you don't lose all that detail that you put in beforehand. This is probably one of the only times that I haven't painted it too much afterwards. So I'm pretty happy with the way this came out. I'm using a Grex airbrush for this. This airbrush is definitely probably not the most precise airbrush to use, as it is a trigger action instead of a pull action, but I really like it. I'm painting the underside of this medium gray, just a simple medium gray by Tamiya, so just a standard color. And I have this thinned out about 60-40-ish probably, just to kind of do it a little bit quicker than what was done before, as you don't really need it to be really thin at this point. You just need it to be thin enough so that it sprays evenly. Next, I'm putting on these decals, and you're not going to see much of this because this was a process, but they came out great in the end, so be sure to stay tuned. They really did come out really good. The Tamiya decals actually were designed perfectly for this wing. There was no issues whatsoever, but they're Tamiya decals. You have to work them. Like, that's the only way to do it, and you have to do it with a bunch of different thinners, and when they dry and don't work, you have to use a bunch more different thinners. Like, there's no way around it. Next, I'm using some milliput to actually put in the wheels, as the wheels are a little bit wiggly. Maybe I have them backwards again, I have no idea. But this milliput idea, super awesome. I stuck these in the wheels, and it actually worked, and I was really surprised. It's a good way to, in my opinion, it was a good way to stick those on the landing gear and make sure that they stuck on perfectly. I don't know how long they last. This is the first time I tried it, but I heard it on the Model Geeks, and it may have been something they wouldn't recommend. I don't know. I had it. I had the milliput. I haven't used it yet, and I wanted to use it, so I used it on the landing gear to see if it worked, and it did. And obviously these landing gear are kind of hard to paint. Next, I do some chipping on the exterior of the aircraft. This, I'm not chipping too much, as I didn't want it to be so badly weathered. I just wanted to match the detailed painting that I did. And basically that's to make it just enough. I don't want to do too much. I don't want to do too little. I want to do just enough and make it look lived in and lived on and worked on, and kind of make it look like it was served in the war. Something off camera I did was I actually did post shade those decals that I put on, and as you can see, the decals went on just fine. I'm proving everyone wrong that Tamiya decals don't work. They do. They certainly do. But I mean, it's probably like 4 hours of my life that I won't get back. But if I were to paint it, it'd be 8 or 9 or 10 hours of my life that I wouldn't get back. So I'm kind of like, well, just use the decals, kind of work them a little bit, or not. So if the decals don't work, then I'll go to paint, or just buy another kit and use the decals and try again. Next, I chip the other stuff and peel some tape. And I know this is always satisfying to watch. And yeah, there's a whole bunch of crap on my windscreen. I don't know what happened or how it happened, but I have no idea. It just showed up. So I pull out a alcohol swab, dip it into a cotton swab, and just be careful at this point because the cotton swab's a little bit too big for this windshield. So make sure when you go at this, just don't do it as much as I did. Don't go right to the line. Just put it right in the middle of the thing and then use a toothpick to scratch and push that stuff around a little bit so you can get the rest off. Most of the stuff was on the inside where there wasn't any paint anyways, so that was lucky. But I also used the toothpick and dipped the toothpick in a cotton swab as well, and that made it saturated enough to peel the paint off. Next, I can remove all of this masking stuff. Now, I use blue tack for most of my masking. I also have some Gorilla white tack that I actually haven't used yet. Blue tack has worked well for me, and I'm always very, very careful about what I use. So I haven't tested that other stuff out. But I'm pretty much out of blue tack, so might be up in the next 3 or 4 videos. Next, I can peel off this tape. Now, I did use a Tamiya masking, or Edward masking. Actually, wait a minute. No, the masking tape came in the kit, and you actually had to cut it out. So just be careful when you cut that stuff out and put it on. But I mean, it's pretty easy to cut that stuff. I mean, it works pretty close. I used foam to seal off all this other stuff that I can pull out now, and a lot of this video actually wasn't really recorded, I'm noticing now at the end of it, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and me building this. I really, really enjoy doing this hobby, and some kits that I built twice, I don't really pay that close attention to. I'm noticing now the exhausts aren't even hit, so that's a rookie mistake on my part, but I did do some post shading, I guess. So next, I'm assembling this landing gear set, and it is very, very true. This landing gear set is stupid. First of all, don't put those gear doors on yet. put the landing gear in first. That was the first mistake I made because the middle part actually sits underneath where the landing gear bay doors. So here I am, I pulled the landing gear doors off, and now I put the landing gear into a inserted spot with super glue. Now I can put that centerpiece on. To get that painted right, I actually used liquid tape again to make sure that it's stuck there. So that concludes the Tamiya Martlet Mark 1, and thank you guys for watching, and definitely hit that subscribe button, hit the bell for future videos. Make sure to get some Warbird coffee, and make sure to listen to Plastic Posse podcast, Model Geeks podcast. We have Dave with the Model Mojo podcast. Gotta check those guys out. They're great. Can't say it enough. Go to warbirdcoffee.com. It's not subscribed. It's just a great company. I met the owners at Oshkosh. They're just super awesome. You guys gotta buy some coffee from there. It's delicious. I bought some. Yummy. Support your Warbirds, support your model companies, and just get back to building. Thanks again.